So you've decided to change out the pots in your electric guitar. In the last video I covered a number of reasons why you might want to do this. For example, you've got damaged pots, they're making noise when you turn them. Or you don't like the way they feel, they're too hard to turn or too easy to turn. Or the taper's not quite right, you're having a hard time dialing in those volume swells. Another reason might be that your pickups are too bright and you want to lower the resistance of your pots to roll off some of the high end. Well, in this video I'm going to tell you how to select pots and I'm going to show how to install them. So first up, let's talk about taper. I've got a pot here, linear taper pot, alligator clipped into the bridge pickup of my Epiphone Riviera P93. So straight from the pickup to the pot and then to a jack and out to my amp. It's a Vox VT30 and just turn it up. And what I'm going to do here is just strum and then try to do a smooth swell from 0 to 10 and we'll see how the sound changes. So again, this is a linear pot. I'll do that one more time, a little more slowly. So you can hear that the majority of the volume change happened in the first quarter turn of the pot, maybe between 0 and 2 on the knob. And after that, you're not really hearing much change. And that's because it's a linear taper. Now they also make logarithmic taper pots or audio taper pots, which I've got one right here. And these pots, the change in volume matches more what your ear expects. So let's hear the similar kind of swell from 0 to 10 on a audio taper pot. So in this case, you could hear, it starts out a little slow, but then there's a really nice transition all the way up to 10. One more time. Pretty different from the linear taper pot. Now, not all audio taper pots are created equal. The logarithmic taper in the pot is basically an approximation. They are not manufacturing it to be a smooth taper all the way around the pot. What they're doing is chaining together a series of linear tapers of slightly different slopes. And what I've found is that in the pots that I have handy here, I've got CTS brand, Bourns brand, Alpha, and JS. The CTS and Bourns are pretty close to a logarithmic taper, but the Alpha and JS, which were the ones that came in this Epiphone, are pretty close to linear, even though they say they're audio taper. Now I've wired up an Alpha 500K audio taper pot to the bridge pickup, direct through the Alpha pot and out to the jack. Let's do the same kind of test where we do a volume swell, 0 to 10. Say that one more time. So it's okay. It's better than the linear pot, that's for sure, but I don't think it has as nice a swell as the Bourns pot. Now I've wired up a CTS 500K audio taper pot. Let's see how that one sounds. Pretty different from the Alpha. Both audio taper. This one has a smoother transition from beginning to end. So unfortunately, there's no easy way to know what the taper of a pot is going to sound like until you get it. The data sheets just aren't that accurate. So you might try some of your friends' guitars and find ones that feel good to you and then see what kind of pots they use and order the same ones. Or you can just order a selection of pots like I did and try to find the one that you like the best. Next, let's consider pot tolerances. Now, typical pots like these have 10 to 20% tolerance ratings on their resistance values, which means you may get a 500K pot like this and measure it on your multimeter and find it's only 400K, which is a pretty big difference. As I mentioned before, lowering the resistance value of your pots can roll off some of the high end. And you can work around this with the treble bleed capacitor, but it's better, I think, to try to start with values that match what you're really expecting. So I recommend when you're ordering your pots, order a few extra, and that way you can measure them on your multimeter and try to choose a nice matched set. You measure a pot by taking a multimeter and connecting it across the two outer lugs of the pot. It doesn't matter what the position of the shaft or knob is because we're just measuring the overall resistance of the pot. And this one measures at 448K. So the next thing to talk about are dimensions. Typical large body pot like this is 24 millimeters for about 1 inch across. This should fit in through the F-holes of most guitars, but if you've got really narrow F-holes, you might need to get a smaller body pot. This is a typical mini pot, which is 16 millimeters across, or about 5/8 of an inch. You can see the size difference. Next thing to consider is the length of the shaft. You just want to measure the thickness of your top. Mine's a 1/4 of an inch thick. You want to have room for the threaded section to reach all the way through the top so that you can screw the nut on, and that the rest of the shaft projects far enough that you can actually put a knob on it. This is a 3/4 inch length shaft, which fits well in my guitar. The threaded section, the diameter here on these pots are 3/8 of an inch, I think, which is typical for Western markets. The ones that are installed in my Epiphone are 5/16 of an inch, about 1/16 less, which must be made for the Asian markets. This means to put these new pots in, I'm going to have to enlarge in the holes in the guitar by drilling. Cover that in a minute. The other thing to consider is solid shafts versus split shaft. On a solid shaft pot, you'll need knobs that slide over and then have a set screw to hold them onto the shaft. On a split shaft, this is it's got a split in it for compression, and it's knurled to grip. The knobs, like the Gibson style hat knobs, or the speed knobs, just push on and hold themselves in place. So that's it for the dimensions when you're ordering your pots. I assume you've already chosen resistances that work well for your pickups. The next thing to do is to install them in the guitar.